Hello everyone and welcome to episode 37 of the Drunken Boxing Podcast. I hope all of you in the Northern Hemisphere are enjoying the arrival of summer. Here, in Beijing, it is starting to get rather hot and humid already, and the mosquitoes are already hungry. Alright, let's get into some Mushin martial culture news. I released a short glimpse of a technical lesson from the Huajin online learning program with excerpts from a lesson on the application of Xing Yiquan's dragon shape. It gives you some insight into the content that is within the program, and if you are interested in learning the art, check it out. I also released a highlight video featuring some various versions of Hebei Xing Yiquan's tiger shape. I filmed this video at the local park I usually do, just before they closed it off to the public as part of their pandemic restrictions recently. If you are interested in seeing some of my lineage's tiger techniques, go check it out. Additionally, I released one of the monthly discussion videos from the Huajin program in full for you to watch. Apart from the technical lesson videos, the program includes monthly discussion videos, which cover a variety of theoretical and practical topics pertaining to the arts and their practice. In this particular video, I address some questions pertaining to the place of traditional arts in combat and life today. I felt the message was important and worthwhile in today's environment, so again, go check it out. I have been working on the translation, dubbing, and editing of a series of recently made Bagua documentaries that were produced in China over the last couple of years. Now, it's a difficult and extremely time-consuming endeavor, but I feel that the international Bagua and Chinese martial arts community would enjoy watching these. So I'm slightly behind on my planned schedule to release the first episode, but I hope to do so in the next week or so. So keep an eye out. As always, doing this type of translation and editing is time-consuming and difficult. So any and all support you are able to give me through Patreon makes this worthwhile of my time and skills, and will enable me to produce more such content into the future. There are general support tiers through which you can do that, and any and all support is highly appreciated. And as mentioned, there is also a third tier, the Huajin tier, in which you can study the arts of Xing Yiquan and Bagua in depth. There is already a vast library of released lesson videos for both Xing Yiquan and Bagua, as well as their related Neigong. So if you are interested in learning Xing Yiquan or Bagua, give the course a try. The Patreon site may be found at patreon.com/Mushin Martial Culture. That's all one word, Mushin Martial Culture. Moving on, as always, the various Mushin Martial Culture merchandise is available on my Teespring store. Over the last couple of weeks, I released 2 new summer t-shirt designs. One featuring a classic old photo of a practitioner doing Beng Quan with the label Got Yi, and another design featuring Pi Quan with the label It Hurts When I Pee. Because it had to be done, of course. If you feel like supporting this podcast indirectly, getting some of the Mushin martial culture and merchandise is one way to do it. You can find the store at the link in the show notes. Alright, let's get into today's podcast. My guest today is none other than Daniel Pesina.
Toasty!
My guest today is none other than Daniel Pesina.
Toasty!
Alright, what the hell is going on? Daniel Pesina is most well known for his iconic work in and contribution to the Mortal Kombat game franchise, to which he gave physical form, creative concepts, and did the motion capture for numerous characters' signature moves. Daniel Pesina's character portrayals include Scorpion, Reptile, Sub-Zero, Smoke, Noob Saibot, and Johnny Cage. Hey man, you gotta stop doing that. I'm sure that many of you will remember the massive impact on pop culture and martial arts that the Mortal Kombat games and related movies, etc. had at that time. Apart from being directly involved in the games themselves, Daniel Pesina was also responsible for putting performance teams together for related tours and performances in the early Mortal Kombat days. He has also worked on major motion pictures and done stunt work for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 movie, as well as on other independent movie projects. What many people don't know about Daniel Pesina is that he has a deep and extensive background in the Chinese martial arts, which he has practiced and taught for the majority of his life. He has studied under well-known teachers both in the USA and in China over the years, and these include Guo Jinhua, Choi Wah Lin, Ma Zhenbang of the Ma family Tongbei, Wang Jianbao, the late great Yin-style Bagua master Zhu Baozhen, as well as Hu Jianqiang and others.
Finish him!
No, stop it. No one is killing anyone. It was a very interesting discussion, and I'm actually quite fond of Daniel Pesina.
Friendship?
Yes, we are indeed friends. He currently teaches martial arts at his school in Chicago, Illinois, and attends retro gaming events all around the world. I'd been hoping to have him on as a podcast guest for quite a while, and finally got him to...
Get over here!
Okay, tough crowd.
That was pathetic.
Hey man, maybe talking to people like that in the outworld is acceptable, but over here, on Earth Realm, it simply is not.
It's official. You suck.
Alright, that's it. Let's just get into the podcast.
Babality.
Unbelievable. Okay, welcome to the Drunken Boxing Podcast, Master Daniel Pesina. I'm honored to have you on.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Big fan.
No, I'm a big fan of yours since I was a kid, so I got to get that off my chest first. I mean, it's very... There's a few things that influenced, particularly, my generation, and I think older generations in terms of their drive to start the martial arts. And the first would be obviously movies. I mean, Bruce Lee inspired me when I was a kid, but the second would be those very early video games. I think like 1990, around that era, there was the explosion in video games, and then you had the fighting games start, and Mortal Kombat, of course, is one of them, and you were in the first one, so it's something that inspired me to get... I was already into the martial arts, but it's something that pushed me further, so just wanted to let you know that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was a really fun project to work on, especially since that era. A lot of things embraced, and there's nothing wrong with it, a lot of things embraced the Japanese martial arts, but everyone working on the first game, as far as the, it was a group of friends, but we were all Chinese martial artists, even though we did come from, I started with judo and Shotokan karate in the 60s, but we really wanted to be like, oh, we're going to really display Chinese martial arts and Chinese theory and mythology.
Yeah, and that was evident. I mean, of course, there was touching on a lot of popular culture from, again, that generation and just before it, with like Big Trouble in Little China and aspects of that. But for sure, as you said, there were aspects in there that were just like, wow, this is Chinese martial arts, and this is, not the common. And of course, I was very much, into Chinese martial arts. But like you said, you were focusing on that. Was really great. And you yourself are a Chinese martial artist, so that's very, very, very inspiring and very interesting to hear. Because, like I said, the game itself, I think, pushed a lot of people into martial arts, and because of the portrayal of Chinese martial arts, I think a lot of people were actually saying, this is something different, and I want to check this out.
Yeah. When I got the chance, we pitched the idea to the company who developed it, and we pitched it actually to the guy who is currently running the franchise. But one of the, just briefly, one of the things, it was Chinese martial arts have been so much in my life that, when my friend was like, hey, we're going to have these Japanese ninjas. And again, nothing wrong with Japanese ninjas, but me being a martial art geek was, that's been so played out. We should have the Lin Kuei. It's a Chinese myth. It's a myth, but but we can really, it's never been done before. And we can make this game really mysterious and kind of have a back that, based in the Chinese martial art that people don't know about. So we could do whatever we want with that. And then, he agreed that that would be a good idea. And so, whenever I see Scorpion and Sub-Zero, those guys are really representative of that Chinese culture.
Well, never mind that. You had the rope dart in there, which I think nobody had seen as well. So, it was just highlighting all these aspects of some of the great depth and breadth and wealth of, not only history and culture, but also content in Chinese martial arts. So you were bringing that forward. Was that your idea to have him use a rope dart scorpion? That is a type of a rope dart type of weapon.
Yeah, it was my idea. Naturally, it was because it is something that wasn't really out there. I used to compete, so I competed with that weapon a little bit, but it's really difficult. It's a difficult weapon to compete with because you can't really do extra loops. It can't touch the ground. It's always got to be shooting out. It's really, really difficult to do it at a competitive level, that weapon. But it was I knew nobody else, it was rare to see. So I was like, we have to put this in there. So, and again, it was just, we were allowed to put in whatever we wanted because it was just so experimental.
Yeah, I mean, never mind difficult to compete with that weapon. That weapon is difficult to learn, master. You end up hurting yourself more than a potential opponent while you're learning it. I mean, I practiced the rope dart as well for quite a few years. And again, I don't know, that probably was an influence from Scorpion when I was even younger, that I wanted to learn that weapon. And I went from rope dart into meteor hammer, which is like the nasty bigger brother. I mean, if you hit yourself, because I mean, back then we weren't using hollow ones. We were using full-on copper balls. So you screw up with that and it's a semi-concussion or a broken bone for a bit of time. You know what it's like. I'm sure you do.
Yeah, when I was learning rope dart from Guo Jinhua, he was teaching some other foreigners, and he arranged to have like a rubber ball on a rope. And so I went to grab one. He's like, no, you have to do it this way because you'll learn quicker. And then after a while, I was like, yeah, but they're having fun with their technique while I'm kind of having fun, but I'm getting beat up.
Yeah.
And then he was just turned to me. He's like, you want to learn like them? And then I looked at their skill level and how much attention he was paying to me. And I was like, no. So Chinese. So, yeah. So,
yeah.
Good times.
You mentioned the mythology of Sub-Zero's clan and ninjas and things like that. Although they're seemingly opposite sides of the ocean there, one being Japan and one being China. I don't know if you've heard the podcast episode I did with a friend of mine his name is Leslie Kahn. Did you manage to catch that episode? I think it's about 2 years old.
No, but I will now go back and listen to it.
Okay, so he is actually a good friend of mine, somebody I look up to as a mentor. He's got a long history of practice of Chinese martial arts and research in Asia. He also went into Japan to continue his studies because he has actually got a tracing of the art of stealth, that type of thing that we associate with ninjas, not so much in the movie portrayal, but actually as a real thing. And he's traced it back in many regards to China. As far as I know, he's in the process of compiling a book with his research in it, which hopefully will come out in this year. But you should check that out because he's got a lot to offer with regards to that side of the real history.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to look him up, and actually, if he's on social media, I'm going to reach out to him to say hi because
I'll put you guys in contact.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, like I said, for the Lin Kuei, actually, originally Scorpion and Sub-Zero are brothers, but so they're from the same clan. But again, back in the day, I read a book. I forget, I'm bad with names, but he was like Art of the Vagabond, and he's Art of the Lin Kuei, So I really looked at that book because it was full of, just the Chinese background. And that's, that was part of my pitch to give to the creator of the game, John. I showed him the book, and I was like, this is what ninjas should look like because they don't look like Japanese ninjas. They look totally different.
Yeah.
And, and just kind of have something unique in the game. So, yeah, it would be cool to see a history on that.
Yeah, you should actually see. I'll also send you a video that Leslie did on on flying darts, throwing darts, because he's exceptionally skilled in that, and he explains a lot of the history and the different types of darts and how they're used and things like that. I mean, it's a mini documentary, I'd say, but it's very eye-opening. And I've seen his skill. He's very skilled with. I mean, that guy can throw anything and probably kill you with it. But he's very, very skilled with his darts. So yeah, I'll put you guys in contact.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, I wanted to hear about your actual. We can talk more about Mortal Kombat and those things in a minute, because I do have some questions. But I thought maybe we could hear a bit about your martial arts background.
I started training with Judo and Shotokan Karate in 1969. I did that for 5 years until I unofficially had my black belt. I'm going to say unofficially because at that time, when I reached 15 years old, I took a black belt test, but I was not allowed to wear a black belt because I couldn't vote. I couldn't pay for my own lessons.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Back then in this during that era, it was like, oh, guess what? If you're not like a man, like basically a man or an adult, you can't really wear a black belt, no matter the skill. So they gave me a black and a brown belt to wear, which meant like, oh, when I become 18, I will get a black belt.
Kind of like a junior black belt that they do in some places today.
Oh yeah, that is. I think it's a really cool concept, but I understand that times change and people are not as patient as they were in the old days. There's a lot to do, so they move forward. So I did that for a while. When that school closed, I went. My dad was like, "Man, this stuff is really good for you. It keeps you busy." At the age of 13, I was taking a bus by myself to go to practice. It was a different era, but it made me kind of a little bit more independent, though.
Good.
Kind of alone. So, that place closed because there were, a lot of martial arts schools just popping up all over the place during the early 70s. So my father when driving around, he was like, we live in Chicago, close to Chinatown. He's like, I'm going to go look in Chinatown. There's martial arts. There should be martial arts there. Yeah. But it was still at the time relatively secret. People would like to practice, but not teach foreigners still, kind of.
Yeah.
Even though they, some would. It was a little more open, but they still have a little secret. So my dad saw a place, and he's like, I'm going to go into this place. It wasn't really. I didn't think it was a martial arts school because the sign, was just a logo. But he was like, no, that's a martial arts school. And he went in and he came out and he's like, okay, you're going to study here. So I came in and I met the instructor there, who was Grandmaster Wei Lun Choi. He is the lineage holder of Luo Bafa as far as like his lineage. Yeah. And later on, in the early mid 70s, like Dan and Asano would come train with him because
really?
he had the cotton belly.
Oh, okay.
So it was, he had like he learned acupuncture. He at one point when he was doing martial arts, he got hurt and he wanted to learn, he went to this acupuncturist. Yeah. Because it is Hong Kong and, that's where you go.
Exactly.
So this guy, he's like in 2 or 3 sessions, he healed me. And I was like, whoa, this is a good way to make money. And so he was like, so I'm going to try to learn this. This is like really cool, but the guy was like, taught him a little bit, but more, he was like, no, you need to be patient. So he taught him some Qigong and the cotton belly. Okay. So later on, he would use that for demonstrations and things of those natures. He can, for competing. But I stayed with him until again he moved. Everybody's on their journey and moves for about I would say almost 3 years doing the Luo Bafa.
And what did you think of the style? I mean, that's even today. It's not. I mean, in China, of course, particularly in more further south, but in China it's known. But in the West, it's not a very well-known style, Liu He Bafa. So back then, it was definitely, something completely unique at that time, because you're talking about a time in the West, particularly when styles that were popular coming out were mostly coming out of Hong Kong and the south of China, Choi Lei Foot, Hung Gar, and styles likened to that. Even what you'd consider northern but coming out of the southern base, like the Jinwu derived styles that would be spreading out to the West. But what was it like? What did you think of Liu Bafa when you were doing it?
Well, it gave me a different taste. Before I was doing basically, and again, no offense, it's just what it is. I was doing, judo and Shotokan karate taught to me by a Caucasian.
Right.
So, and it's still the 70s. 69 is still 1970s. They're still apprehensive to teach. Even, later on when I studied Bagua, I really learned a lot more about why they're so apprehensive. But anyway, the first 2 weeks, all I did was Gungbu and Santi.
Okay.
That's all I did for 2 hours. I would do it with one leg, and he's like, okay, hold the bow stance. And then when you're tired, shift your weight back and do the basically 60-40.
Right, Santi Sure, basically.
Yeah. And so I did that, and so I'm kind of like looking around, and I'm doing that, and then he's like, when that leg gets tired, do it on the other leg. So after that, I survived 2 weeks. I would be complaining to my dad, I'm just doing the same thing over and over. And he's like, yeah, but that's the way it is.
Your dad's a wise man. I'll tell you that.
It's 3 months. You're going to stay there 3 months.
Yeah. Contrast that to parents today. I mean, in 2 weeks, they're expecting their kids to have learned the whole system and get a black belt or something. Your dad was wise because that's the way things, 2 weeks is still, it's pretty long, especially at that age. But in the traditional scheme of things, that's par for the course, not even really. So your dad's a wise man for not saying, oh, they're ripping you off, let's get you somewhere else where they're teaching you some. So that was good.
Yeah. My dad, even though I'm from Mexican descent, my dad served during the Korean War.
Okay.
For the U.S. Army, so he had some knowledge of discipline, and he wasn't mean. He was really, really patient. My dad is like a saint. My mom is totally different. My mom is fire. They're like yin and yang, really. And that's why they're in their 90s and they're still together. And I think really that's why, is because one is so on the other end of the other one that they balance each other out.
Oh,
but anyway. But anyway, after 2 weeks, he started to teach me. He was like that. He was like, it's just to make sure that you're going to practice. He goes, because this is a school where this is not like a private lesson. I give you something to practice, and you practice it until I come back around and make corrections or give you more to practice. And I was like, oh, okay. So, we started doing the Liu Bafa. I liked it a little better because at that time I've seen some Tai Chi. So I thought it was more, it looked kind of like, because you do it slow, because you want to get that connection,
yes,
body connection. So, but it looks totally different. It looks like Xingyi. It looks like, now when I look back and practice a little bit of it, don't practice as much as I should, but when I do it, I'm like, oh, this is definitely, a lot of people say it came from Yang style and Xingyi, and I was like, I could see how they made that reference.
Right.
So but that training was really, 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 really good. He was well respected instructor.
Right. Yeah, I've heard the name. I've heard the name. I'm not too familiar with a lot of the guys that taught or teach on your side of the world deeply, but I've heard the name before. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I studied with him until he moved. He liked to cook, more than anything. So he opened a restaurant up further away where I couldn't reach him at the age I was, because I still had to go, in school. So I didn't follow him, but eventually, through practice, I found my way into studying 7-star praying mantis.
Okay. Was it the Hong Kong derived 7-star?
Yes,
okay.
It was Hong Kong derived from, the English name was Raymond Lai, from Chu Chi Man from Hong Kong. I know that much. so it was very much kind of, he was actually a collector for the tongue. So he was kind of had mob connections and was you know, a little, he was a good instructor because he really taught me like a different type of discipline, meaning everything we did during our workout, he would do. So he was really big on, okay, we have to do a stance work. So we would do stance work, you know, later on I would learn that version was watered down because they would do stance work more in China, but we're in Chicago. Okay. So we would do stance work for like 15 minutes, you know, hold the horse stance 1 minute. And then he would like, okay, you guys rest. And while we're resting, he's still holding the horse stance. And then we do bow stance, gung fu. And then we do it about, and then he's like, after 1 minute, okay, you guys stand up. And then we rested, but he's still doing it. So he would do everything we would be doing and more.
Okay. So he was leading by example, really.
Yeah, really, really leading by example. Like, and two, like everything, you know, okay, we're going to do 100, you know, we're going to do 100 push-ups, you know, 20 American style push-ups, 20 tiger push-ups. And he had, you know, so we're doing all these push-ups. And in the end, he would be, okay, you guys rest. And he would be pumping out more. So it was just like, he was just like a machine. But naturally, he needed that because his job required him to make sure that he was physically fit and able to do stuff. But yeah, and you know, and that was, besides demonstrations that I did with Wei Lun Choi, you know, one time when I was practicing with Lai, drunk guy came in with, hey, you guys teach karate, and Shibu Lai was like, yeah, well, kind of, this is Chinese karate, you know, because it's kind of easygoing too, kind of rough but easygoing. And the guy was like, oh, I do boxing. And Master Lai was like, oh, boxing is really, really, really good. And then the guy is like, but boxing's better than what you do. And Lai his face just changed. And he was like, I don't think so. And the guy was like, you know, he's drunk. The guy lifted up his hands to like a guard position, like boxing. Yeah. Like he's going to box. And Lai just hit him across the top of the head with his forearm. And I heard like this thunk, and the guy immediately dropped. And Lai looked at him. He grabbed him by the collar and dragged him out of the office. And the office was open, so it's not like a private office. Out the front door, onto the sidewalk. We're all watching. Put him down. He comes in, looks it up. He's like, why ain't you guys training? And we're like jumping back. And I was like, holy cow, I think he killed that guy. I think we murdered because the sound that came from getting hit on the top of the head. But you know, when we left, he wasn't there. So apparently something, and nobody ever came around to ask questions. So apparently that did, but often during demonstrations, he would break baseball bats. Wow. And at that time I was like, well, this kind of, you know, it's cool, but this got to be some kind of trick too, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So, but I really learned that, you know, it wasn't really his type of stuff wasn't really tricks. He like did the whole arm conditioning, and you know, he would make us do the arm conditioning and hitting, you know, the sandbags and hitting bags with iron pelts in it and things like that. You know, not super hard, because he wasn't like, he realized he had a good business sense. He realized like, you know, we're Americans and we're a little bit softer, and you know, this is what he needs to have his school going, that not everybody should get beat up. Right. So, but I was just like, wow, this stuff is really, really works.
Of course, people don't realize that, but it's the gradual conditioning. It's pretty important, but it really does work.
Yeah, I think it's something that is missing today in the general our martial art world. I think a lot of practitioners forget, like, you know, you have to compare, you know, doing martial arts to being a rock star. You don't play guitar in 1 year or 2 years and become a rock star. You know, those guys started really, really young, sacrificed a lot of time, you know, doing the basics, doing the scales, you know, their basics, and doing things like that, conditioning their fingers to be able to play guitar that long, because again, you know, little things that we don't realize really go into martial arts. Yeah. So, but I did that for for a while until basically China opened up. They were opening up, and
Right.
through what was the guy's name? Roger Tung, I think his name was. He had trips to China.
Okay.
He had trips to China, and one of our friends was like, "Man, if this guy has trips to China, we should go train." So in like about 80, I'm going to say 84, 85, I got to go to, I guess, Sichuan, China.
Wow.
Mainland China, and train with what was Wang's name? Wang Jianbao.
Okay.
He later on he coached the Jiangsu wushu team, contemporary wushu team.
Okay. Probably one of the older generation coaches there, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely old school. The first guy to ever do jumping inside crescent split, which he said was a total accident. He's like, I'm doing my individual routine, and I did. Later on, he got into prison too. So when people look it up, but for speaking out against, basically he wanted freedom,
Right.
not communism.
Yeah.
That's a totally different thing. In my interpretation, communism is just extreme capitalism from a different point of view, because only the wealthy are really getting wealthy. But that's political. That's political. When you're not in it, you call it communism.
Right. Well, I mean, it's nuanced, but it's all got the same rot at the core. So
Yeah, it really is. Not to, we shouldn't fool ourselves. But trained for 3 months in mainland China. First time, it was brutal. Get hit with a stick. I thought I had a Chinese name, but really it was, I forget the name, but basically later on the interpreter would come like twice or 3 times a week sometimes. But later on, he's like, no, that means lazy capitalist.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I thought I had a really cool Chinese name, but apparently I did not. It was, and it was brutal. We trained, twice a day. I remember not being able to walk. I thought, from doing all these other martial arts, until I knew I was going to China.
Amount, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to China, so I should run 2 or 3 miles a day. Try to build up stamina and stuff like that. So we learn as much as I can and do that. And that was no preparation for anything. Everything was always, go faster, jump higher,
Right.
lower stances. You have to make sure that nothing moves. When you want nothing to move, nothing should move.
Yeah.
There's everything has to be really, really clean. Contemporary wushu is still based in traditional wushu,
Well, definitely back then. I mean, nowadays it's gone off to a very strange tangent, but definitely back then.
Yeah, I would agree. Somebody who, coming from somebody who used to compete in contemporary wushu, we could touch on that later. Why my main instructor, who I call my main instructor, Guo Jinhua, did that, was because just, it was just really quickly, his view was you compete in traditional wushu because your body has to be extreme. You have to do the splits, you have to do head to toe, you have to do, you have to be able to do all your jump kicks landing on one leg, you can't move out of your stance once you come out of a technique. Everything is very, very strict. So competing trims down not only trims down your technique, but you have a goal to try to, go to achieve a lot of, 1 or 2 times more for some of my kung fu brothers. I was throwing up at, just from training.
Of course.
Because he is really pushing you because his version of competing is Chinese competing, while I am an American, which is totally different than that.
Yeah.
But he was just like, that's why I made you do it, because then it would make your traditional even better, because I can't really, we're in America, I can't really hit you hard. I could tap you, but I can't really hit you hard. I'll get in trouble, So, he did, so we didn't leave welts, but it would hurt your pride. I think that was the main thing with the stick, is it hurt your pride. 2, it makes you memorize. You're like, man, I got to get that better.
Right.
When you tapped with the stick. It's not really everybody's like, oh, does it hurt? No, it hurts your pride more than it hurts your body. Because too, we're used to the whole conditioning. You
Right.
know, bumping trees, hitting bags, getting kicked in the legs, all that stuff. You know, the tap
Yeah.
hurts you more deeply. You know, your ego more deeply.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, so I came back, to America, trained like that, would uh, do more, like just because it was contemporary driven, did more, but still kind of practice what I had before, you know, praying mantis forms and a little bit Luo Bafa. Kept on going until, you know, mid 80s. Then I met who I call my main master because he really opened my eyes to Chinese martial arts, Guo Jinhua. He's from Wuhan.
Okay.
And he trained with Wen Jinmin and Lu Yihua, who are some of the founders of contemporary like wushu.
So the early generation people, the early
Yeah,
generation of
yeah,
people that were involved in the formulation of the sport. Yes.
yeah.
Which was interesting because people kind of today have this kind of misunderstanding, thinking that it's totally disconnected from traditional. No, no, no. Back then it was different, especially that generation of people. Almost all of them came from some traditional background.
Yeah, all of them were hunted during the Communist Revolution, never caught. So that's why a lot of times they're apprehensive to teach because they think like someday,
It's going to happen again.
someday it'll happen again, and then this time I'm too old and I will get caught and go to jail.
Yeah.
But I know that for sure. Wen Jinmin has taken people's lives in open matches. So this is about martial arts hand to hand, proven. Not really. Before the Communist Revolution, it was like bodyguard type of thing.
Exactly. I mean, that's what it was. It was most of the people were employed in some form or another. They had to use the skills. So.
Yeah, yeah. So I train with them even till even kind of I say till present, because I continue practicing, and too when I learned from other people through my journeys, I always go to Master Go, and it's Master because he's really I call these people Master because they have given me a skill, and I do it out of respect because the skill I think that they've done, even though a lot of times, I've gave them money to help support themselves. They charge for lessons.
Of course.
So they can pay their bills, which is perfectly fine. But I think often that these guys who I call master have given me more than I have given them money.
Right.
They have truly shown me things that I'm like I would never have.
No monetary value can match the value that this has given you in your life. I mean, yeah, I understand that completely.
Yeah, and through my journey after Guo Jinhua, I really wanted to do like more. One of my favorite things is Northwestern style martial arts.
Shibai, yeah.
Yeah, so
Gansu in those areas.
yeah, so he was like, "Oh, I know a guy. Go try to get some time off and go to China and train with Ma Jianbao." So I was just like, "Oh, okay. Yeah." So old school. That's the guy. I come back, after getting beat up, and I'd show it to him, Master Go, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, this, and I was like, "Oh, I want to do this," and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, look for this guy, or do I could show you basics of that, and I could take you." I've done some because he did study with Wen Jinmin, who was really big on the Mianchuan,
Cotton boxing.
Yeah. So I got to go over to China, spend some time there, come back, and talk it over with my main instructor, who was always about, no, you got, you're studying with me, but he was very open.
That's great.
Go to this guy. He would give me suggestions. Go to this guy. Go to that guy. Hey, this guy's giving a seminar in America. Well, I don't really know him, but I know that his instructor is pretty good. So chances are you can get some good tidbits out of him.
Yeah. That's great. And also that you were traveling to China to actually continue your learning and going to these places and these people. I mean, especially in those earlier days, that's not only obviously valuable to you in your life, but I mean, it's not really common, especially not from America's side. I mean, sure there are some other people that did similar things, but you're pretty early, and that was quite an extensive. I mean, you went from the south basically, you went to Xibei, you learned Xibei styles and northwest and stuff like that, and you basically, the Ma family are renowned for their styles that originated up there, and they formulated them. I don't know if you listened to the podcast I did with Ma Mingda's son, Ma Lianjun. He's
Yeah,
yeah.
Hopefully one day. I haven't been back to mainland China since my my Bagua master, Zhu Baozhen, passed away.
Right.
I'd like to return to China. I don't know how it is now, but before it was really, we didn't really have cell phones that really worked. So there was training and there was no sightseeing because your legs are too tired to go sightseeing. And then you do more training. But then, most of my instructors, we'd go out to dinner afterwards and we'd talk martial arts for 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of them were curious about, they're like, oh, what, even though my main instructor wasn't super famous with the older crowd, a lot of them knew Wen Jinmin and Lu Hihua. So they were like, oh, yeah, and that's how, actually later on, when I was in 2000, when I went to China, I really wanted to, before I was doing a lot of Chen style Tai Chi.
Okay.
But I learned Chen style because my instructor was like, learn Chen style, learn Xingyi. That way, when you go to Bagua, you know what it's not.
Okay.
And which didn't make any sense until you actually do it. So later on, I was like, man, I really want to do Bagua. I've always wanted to do Bagua. Master Go won't teach me Bagua because, he says I'm not flexible enough and stuff like that. And it's not like, it wasn't flexible because because I could do chin to toe.
Right.
I could do splits, as
a different type of flexibility.
Yeah, it was not tendon flexibility.
Yeah.
Even Northwestern styles were difficult for me because my tendon wasn't super flexible, but that's what I really admired. You always admire things that you do not have.
Yeah.
So one of my students was living in Beijing, and he was like, oh, I know, through connections, he's like, oh, I know somebody who's good, and they say he's really good in Bagua.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'd like to go spend, 6 weeks training. And so he was like, okay, come, let's arrange for you to come. You can stay at my house. He was teaching English there and not doing, originally he wanted to go do some Xingyi because we come from a big Xingyi background. Right. But later on, because he stayed there, he loved the culture, he wasn't training a lot, and he was working more. Yeah.
That happens to a lot of people that come here initially that want to train, then they kind of get pulled into the life and the training goes by and off to the side. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, because too, it's China. So working 12, 14 hours is not uncommon.
Yeah. Yeah, so those English centers for sure. It's also, they drain you. So. Yeah.
But but he took me to someone who okay. So, I've been teaching some foreigners coming in. So, so I went to meet this Bagua master, and first thing he's like, hey, do something for me.
Was this Zhu Baozhen that you went to see?
Yes, I went to see Zhu Baozhen.
Yeah.
And he was like, do something for me. And so I was like, okay, well, I got to kind of try to impress him, but I'm not going to really impress him because no matter, how many awards you win internationally during a contemporary wushu thing and how many traditional things, it's not the same culture.
Right.
We do the 2-hour practice in the States and not the 3-hour twice a day when we go to China type thing. Yeah. Which is exponential. When you practice 2 hours a day, it's different than practicing, 3 hours twice a day. You really get good really, relatively quickly.
And it's also part of the life. And this is it's hard for me to get Westerners to understand. That's like, in the West, you go to class as an extra part. It's an extra thing you do. Over here, we wake up, we go train. After training, you go do your work or whatever. After work, you go train again.
Yeah, 7 days a week.
That's like you eat breakfast, you go to train. I mean, that's the same concept. It's just part of your daily life. So it's quite hard for people to understand that because it's just what you do. Like if it's summer, you train with just shorts on and no shirt. If it's the middle of winter, you just put on more layers, but you're training every single day. That's just how it is. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and two, I think that a lot of them understand that a lot of the older generation, they actually were taught, like Guo Jinhua was like, he goes, you know what, I teach you like this because this is the way that I was taught. And my master thought that one day I would actually be fighting like this for my life. Because he, during when he was, not only did the open matches, but when he was pursued, he, you got to fight, and sometimes somebody doesn't survive.
Yeah.
So he was like, the instructors teach you like one day at least the older guys, the really traditional guys, they think you're going to use this. They have no concept of what it is really in the U.S. besides videos, seeing videos and stuff like that. They think that, one day, you're going to use it. Has some interesting stories about that. But yeah. Zhu Baozhen was like, hey, one time he was say, hey, there's a guy who did no offense, just a story. He was like, there's a guy who did some translations from work for me, and he never paid me. Can you go look him up and have him pay me? And then I was like, master, we really don't do that in the U.S. He goes, but no problem. He goes, I've seen your martial arts. He's like, you're probably the best Caucasian that I've seen, from the U.S. He goes, so you can easily take this guy. And the other guy was like, hey, we don't really.
It's kind of not really within the legal framework.
Do that stuff. We don't really go around, because somebody owes you money. Kind of. He's like, yeah, but you don't have to really. He's like, you don't have to really fight him. Just show him what your martial arts, and he will understand that he can't beat you.
Yeah.
But it's funny for stories. A totally different viewpoint.
You mentioned there was somebody who took you through to Zhu Baozhen. Now, I know somebody here from way back when. He's a Polish guy.
Oh yeah, I met
Thomas.
I forget his name. Yeah, I met Thomas.
Okay.
Actually, my friend was Samir Karim.
Okay.
But I met Thomas and trained next to Thomas.
Yeah, because Thomas was training with Zhu Baozhen as well back then.
Yeah. He actually translated some interviews that I had because later on he wanted me to write a book in English about Yin-Fu, about hard Yin-Fu, not the big style Yin-Fu that I see a lot of, like on YouTube. I took some seminars, from Hu Baozhen.
Hu Jianbao. So Hu Jianbao's yin style comes through xie pei qi. I mean, if you like, this is something that I've always, because look, I do Liang style. My Liang style comes through Li Ziming. And Liang style is classified as yin and cheng combined. And when I see our yin style, I see a lot more resemblance with Zhu Baozhen stuff. Now, Zhu Baozhen and my teacher knew each other as well. I mean, they're all older generations. And that is some sort of a, I don't know, it's like a looking glass that you can see, because Liang Zhenpu, he studied with his older brothers, including Yin Fu and Cheng Tinghua. He was Dong Haichuan's student, but he also studied with his older brothers, which were Cheng Tinghua and Yin Fu. So that's why the Liang style has elements of yin. And when we do our piercing palms and everything, you can see how hard and how sharp it is. I mean, that's how we do it. It's very close to aspects, and there's a lot that I've seen in Zhu Baozhen's system that there's a lot of mirroring in those aspects in the Liang style, the yin aspects in there, which is different to what you just said with the other styles. It
is fascinating that we are related through Bagua. We really are. It's not really. I think too that, when practicing, a lot of foreigners forget that all these practitioners had a background already in it, except for what's it, Ma style Bagua. supposedly he didn't have any, but I find that hard to believe him not having any and being so good, because you do need like a background, because it is kind of complicated, meaning how the timing of the footwork and always being moving to.
Well, you have to have some physical basis before he.
Yes.
And I don't think Dong Hai Chuan was so patient that he's going to teach somebody just how to start stretching and developing his muscles. I think he's going to be working with people that have already some martial physical ability, which is the case for basically most of his disciples, or the styles that came out after him. Almost all of them had a background in something.
Yeah, I agree that it is, because from the stories that I've heard, not only from Guo Jinhua and Zhu Baozhen, but some of the other instructors that, came to visit, because he was Zhu was like, oh, I have a foreigner who actually can do Bagua. So we got together with a few people, but they too were like, oh, he wasn't very, he is I have great respect for him, but as a person he wasn't very. But it's back in the day, he wasn't very nice. But if you're being a bodyguard, you have to have, people have to know you. Yeah. Not meaning not to mess with you, because it's not you guarding. When you're flying his banner, people knew, stay away from him. Exactly. He's not in the sky. Go rob somebody else, because he's going to come after you.
Yeah.
He's going to come after you. He might come after your family, because Chinese people do that. Yeah. The culture does it, not Chinese people. But back in that day, that's why nobody messed with you, because there were consequences.
Yeah.
Not a slap in the hand, but there's really, really deep consequences.
Yeah, actually you raise a very interesting point. That's a lot of, again, you've understood it, but a lot of Westerners don't understand about Chinese culture. Baochou, or revenge, vengeance, is almost expected as part of the culture. So if somebody's done something to you, you can basically expect, or you've done something to somebody, you can expect revenge. Don't think it's going to be turning the other cheek. And it might not come now. It'll come at some point.
Yeah. So. Yeah, because it's Buddhist. But too, when I look at it, like, it's kind of, it is revenge, describe it as revenge, but it really is justice. Just be nice to each other, and then nobody will be going after you.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, I found it's a lot more akin to the underlying culture here than I mean, Buddhism might be, you could say, in that regard, it's kind of just righting or putting things back in balance. But yeah, it is definitely part of the culture here.
Yeah, it is. It's and too, it's a different culture.
Yeah.
It's not here, it's there. Everybody has a system, just like in martial arts.
Yeah.
You have a system. If you have the whole system really back for what it's used for, for martial art application, if you have one complete system, you don't need another system. You already have one system. A lot you might want to try to taste other systems to find, a base system, because again, anything you take in, you add to yourself.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, it sounded like it cut off for a second. Anyway, but I heard you fine.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because, again, you're on the other side of the world, 7 hours difference,
Yeah.
You're a future man right now.
I think
this is technology is wonderful.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, my goal with these was to do them in person, but then COVID and the borders are closed here, and I'm not going anywhere for the foreseeable future, so I don't know when I'll be able to do them in person. But hopefully one day we can actually meet, if I'm ever on your side of the world or you're back on this side of the world. So, but
yeah, that would be awesome. To get to work out together and ideas. It's a kung fu family. It is a family.
Definitely.
This stuff is dying, and we have to keep whatever little we have part of that experience and knowledge. We have to keep it going. At least that's how I feel.
I agree fully, and have to keep it going in its full entirety. And I think that's something that's very important. So,
yeah. Even today, like, if I see somebody coming in, I'll take a seminar or do that. If somebody's coming in, I'll try to take a seminar. Like I said, I took a seminar with Hu Jianbao. I took a seminar with Li Bao. He does Ma style. I forget. Oh man, I'm really apologize. But I try to take a seminar from anybody I can because I'm just willing to kind of learn.
Right.
See what it's about or what it is. See what's the difference. My instructor Guo Jinhua was always like, "Oh yeah, you try to do it everywhere. Steal their kung fu." That's what I have the hashtag now. Steal my kung fu. Really, Guo Jinhua was like, "Oh, you want to steal their kung fu? Go learn from them and just add them. If you have questions, you could ask me, and I could tell you if they're really watered it down or what they do." He goes, "But usually." He goes, at your level, Chinese guys, us Chinese instructors always want to one-up each other because of our ego. So if you go, and two, when I went to study with Zhu Baozhen, I showed him some things, and he was like, "Where did you learn that?" And I was like, "Guo Jinhua." And he was like, "I don't know that guy." Mm-hmm. And then I was like, "Oh, he studied from Wen Jinmin and Lu Han." He goes, "Oh, that's my kung fu brother." We have the same instructor. We did, Lu Cheng Li, he was like, we're connected through him. And so all of a sudden he was like, you're going to be my disciple. Okay. He's just all of a sudden, just through that connection and seeing that, he's like, somebody took care of you. Somebody gave you things that other foreigners don't get, generally.
Right.
Not none. But generally, we really have to connect with the instructor, and then they really start showing us things. And he was like, "Oh, during classes, there would be times where I'd ask him a question. And he goes, that question you ask in private because we don't teach that to the general public." And I looked at him, like that. And later on, I asked him. That's when I learned, like, yeah, we don't do a lot of things that would get us in trouble with the Chinese government, meaning we can't. We're arming people. He goes, Chinese martial arts is arming people, and that's why, government would change quickly because you didn't need to raise an army. There was already an army in the population, and we just had to get together and overthrow the government. And they just don't want you to weaponize, wushu.
Well, I think that's a aspect of all societies. But isn't that in line with that saying that the government should be scared of its populace? It shouldn't be that the populace is scared of the government. And I guess that's the foundation upon which it's built.
Politics. Politics.
Yeah.
You learn a lot. Because I never looked at it like that way. He was like, he talked about Zhu Baozhen talked about his training with Hu Jianqiang.
Oh, I don't recall his teachers' names off the top of my head, but yeah.
Yeah, but they were they were practicing during the Cultural Revolution.
Oh, so was my teacher. Teacher.
So it was really scary. He's like, we would practice with no lights in the forest.
Exactly.
And then we'd have to dry off and go make hot tea. And when when relatives come to check on the old man, we would just, a young man is just checking on, old guy just talking over tea.
Right.
So it was like, I was like, and he's like, you had to make sure that nobody saw you. Somebody saw you, they're going to get you, and they're going to.
Yeah, you're gonna get told on. My teacher used to tell me that because like they would be able to hear and they would know when other people. Because my teacher does, he's Bagua and Xingyi, predominantly Xingyi, but they would know in the dark in those places if there were other Xingyi practitioners around because you could hear it. You could hear the sound of their practice. You can't see them, but they could hear each other. And that's how they had to train like a lot of that period. So. Yeah.
Man, I forget her name now. She's here in America, but she's considered one of the Chinese sword saints. The name's going to come to me. Mm-hmm. But she told me a story during the Cultural Revolution when they caught her. They would just torture her, not ask her any questions, torture her, and then throw her back in her cell. But she was like, she goes, coming from a kung fu background, my master
tortured me worse.
Tortured me worse, and they would torture her because she would be in her cell practicing, and they come in and tell her to stop, and she wouldn't stop. So they torture her and throw her back in the cell. And she was like, a month into it, I was practicing, and the guy opened the drawer, and the other guy was like, "What's she doing? What's she doing?" And he closed the door, and he's like, "She's not doing anything." He's like, and I broke him. He got tired of torturing me and trying to make me stop doing, wushu, kung fu. But I kept practicing, and finally he was just like, I'm just going to ignore her because there's no way that, I've touched her every day for a month. I can't break her.
Right.
So she was just like, I was just like, holy cow. They would really try to, that was their method of brainwashing. It was, physical torture.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
How long did you practice with Zhu Baozhen? I mean, I can't recall. I think he passed away. Was it 2013? Somewhere around.
Yeah, something like 2000.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, man. I have some stuff. Yeah, but I trained like at least once a year from 2000 to his passing.
Okay.
So I recall one time, good stories because your human body can really take a lot.
Yeah.
One time I made the mistake of going to Beijing, which is just like Chicago in the winter.
Yeah.
So, which is cold. It's cold. We practice every day, but every night by a frozen lake with only basically a track jacket on and a cap. Because he was like, well, if you do the Qigong right,
you'll warm up.
Yeah, you'll stay warm. And that philosophy was really, really good because during practice, you stay warm, but once you start cooling off, your clothes are wet.
Yeah.
I would be walking it back to my room sometimes with frozen cotton, frozen layers of clothes. It was just like, holy cow. But you know what? It didn't kill me.
Of course. I mean, that's you eventually get used to it. I mean, that's how we train here.
Yeah.
I used to watch guys start off like walking a circle in the dead of winter, and we'd start with Ding Shi, our fixed posture palms, and by like 3 or 4, they're so hot that they're taking their shirts off. So I mean, I've seen that quite a few times, and you can actually see steam coming off of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is awesome that we can, when you really look at it, and two, this is not, if you want it, you could, of course you need to find a good instructor to get that knowledge. But if you really want it, you can really strive. If you're willing to sacrifice, you can get this. Your body can absorb this.
Yeah.
You could do this. You could really do amazing things. Any of the listeners, just keep practicing.
Yeah.
You can really do it. Of course, one of the things that Zhu was really interested was, he was like literature. He was like, what kind of books do you do? And then, I jump online at that time, it was as long as I didn't go to any political sites, I can, in Beijing, you can
read it.
It was, you could show him what books you had. And then he was like, yeah, but those are just, he goes, we don't even have books like that because they're so basic. He goes, it's like the general population knows what are in your books. And he goes, it's amazing that you can, some people can get more knowledge when you guys have, in America, our basic Chinese, at that time, book knowledge where we can get stuff was so poor, for lack of better definition. There wasn't really a lot of, now we're getting more translations, but there wasn't a lot of translations.
Yeah, back then not. I mean, I would say it's even up until maybe even 10 years ago, what was out there in English in translation about culture and about martial arts was, as you said, quite superficial. A lot of it. Now it's getting better, I'd say. Over the last 10 years or so, there's a lot of people that have put in the time and that have, speak the language, and they're starting to translate and put stuff out there. So, because there's a problem with a lot of some of those books that they'll hire a Chinese translator. But if you don't practice first, like if we're talking about martial arts stuff, if you don't practice, Chinese translator is going to screw it up anyway. Even if he speaks English and Chinese, it doesn't matter. It's going to screw up the translation.
Yeah. Even when even though you could practice some martial arts, but if you if you haven't been studying in China for a long period of time, your translation is still off. Or you always give your
Misinterpretation, really.
Yeah, yeah. During Jew was smart because again, we talk about a mutual friend, Thomas. We had Thomas translating sometimes for our private discussions and when we were talking about doing a book, and but oftentimes he would have two translators
Okay.
because he was like my student might add what they got their view out of it, which is great for them, but it's not really what we're trying to say because we have to get a phrase that is unique for you. He goes, so Bagua is not always taught the same to everybody, even though the general frame is,
Right.
You have to see what attributes are, you're better at or what things you're better at. So it's, he can be describing it one way, but that's kind of what it is for him, but it's not really what I'm trying to say. So, Jew would often have two translators to make sure that, the idea, the concept that he was trying to get across would come out in a fashion that when somebody else is getting it, they would have like, oh yeah, it's not, when you read it or see it, you would get your own view of it.
Okay, yeah. That's smart. I mean, that's smart for. He's forward thinking in that way. He was. So yeah.
Yeah. He when we were talking about doing this, he was like, before I really embraced the old way and did not want to share my martial arts with somebody who wasn't going to dedicate their life to it. He goes, now I found, he's like my son. He's like, I tried to pass everything to my son, but my son doesn't really want this life that I have.
It's normally like that. It's quite common like that.
Yeah, he wants his own life. So he goes, so now I try to, if anybody who's even, mediocre, I will try to get them to teach them in order to make sure that this art doesn't die.
Yeah. Yeah, he had one of his more outstanding Chinese students. I can't remember his name. He's a small guy. He's quite short. The last time I saw him was at my martial uncle, Zhao Daiyuan. He was accepting some students, some disciples, and I accompanied my teacher to the Baishi ceremony, and of course he invited. In fact, some of the other style heads of that time that were still alive came around, but this student of Zhu Baozhen's, and I can't remember his name. I'll send you a photo of him, of us together.
Yeah, probably. I know that we trained a lot with Zhang, who won during one competition. He won, the Bagua.
Yeah, probably the same guy. Probably.
Yeah, he's thin, short and thin.
Yeah.
Really flexible.
Yeah.
Kind of really, really, really flexible.
Yeah, that's him.
I trained with him, and another he mainly focused on Chung.
Oh, okay.
And we had another who mainly focused on Yin Fu, who was, more responsible for me, I guess. Because again, it's coming from that, like you said, you're in this martial family, and though you have a main instructor, as for me, I taught a lot of my my master Guo Jinhua students, because I was the older brother, so I would have to.
Well, that's
guess what? That's your responsibility to teach them while I teach somebody else.
Exactly.
And then I'll make corrections as I need to, and then we could discuss what corrections we're making or why I'm doing this. To really kind of pass on different things.
Yeah. So I mean, that was a great loss to the Bagua community when Zhu Baozhen passed. But over the last few years, we've lost quite a few of the older generation guys. Like, people don't realize, that, and this is the tragedy of COVID for the last 3 years, is that people are dying in terms of these older generation guys from old age, not necessarily from COVID, but we've been closed here for so long that people from abroad that used to come and train with them annually. I mean, 3 years is not a short time. It's a long time to be separated and unable to see. And in the meantime, people are passing away. I mean, Zhu Baozhen passed before COVID, but I'm just using this, to say that, this is a period now of, and China's still closed. I don't know when the borders will open. So, it's a difficult time right now for everyone, I guess, but particularly in the border here. So,
Yeah. And it isn't, it's not only China. It's just, same thing in the U.S. It's like, you know, I know, at least this is my view, and sorry for veering off,
No
but,
problem.
it's, we got this vaccine. It's not perfect, but, we have to think of, not more of our responsibilities than our freedom. Not freedom, but freedom is more responsibility than entitlement.
Right.
We should try to, it's not a big thing to mask up, or do that stuff in my point of view. It's not that, and we should try to take care of each other, just like we do when we're training. When we're training with our fellow, practitioners, we don't, really, we try to exchange ideas, and even though, sometimes it is hard, it's, they're still our kin in blood, and not in blood, but in sweat.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, we have to take care of each other. Otherwise, it'll really close up, and this martial art
For sure.
will die.
For you, just looking back, you started training with Zhu Baozhen after you had been involved in the Mortal Kombat project. Do you think if you had studied with him before that, you would have put a lot of Bagua stuff as a suggestion into the characters somewhere?
Actually, no, because at that time there was no motion capture or Photoshop. So we wanted to make the game more like a kung fu movie.
Oh, okay.
But it was 2D. So a lot, when I was, basically it was me and the creator, John Tobias, locked up in a room for 10 hours for 6 days, going through all the martial art moves I could think of and seeing how they would fit in the game was really, and I was just pulling stuff off of like just any Chinese thing I learned, because it transitions well, because, you can't really use judo, and you can't really, and then if I used any of the Shotokan karate I learned, it would look too much like Street Fighter. So I really wanted to do like a Chinese martial art game.
Yeah.
So the actual 2D would negate any type of Bagua movement in the end.
Right.
We had to really make it like, okay, it really can't be, just the way it was going, anything Northwestern or anything like that. It would definitely have to be Northern or Southern, because they can make a distinction. Otherwise with the frames and everything, it would look like it was either Northern or Southern.
Right.
Just the technology didn't survive that. But now my brother is in charge.
Oh, okay.
Was in charge, Carlos Pesina, of the motion capture. Recently he retired, but he did do, him and some of my students still work on the game, so they did do a little bit of Bagua and Shingi in the game.
Oh, very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
How did you actually get involved in that whole project back then?
I used to compete on an open circuit here in the U.S., and there was a tournament called Battle of Atlanta where they were looking for stunt people for a movie project that they wouldn't say what it was. Later on, when I got to do the part, it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Oh, okay.
So I did stunt work in that, and then when I got back, my brother Carlos, drew, and one of his friends who used to draw at my parents' kitchen table was John Tobias, the main creator of Mortal Kombat.
Oh, yes.
So he had, when he was growing up, he had a vision of being a director. So he approached me, and he was like, "Hey, we got to do a kung fu movie, and I'll film it and get, I'll film it and we'll make a kung fu movie, So that type of talk, and we tried to do that thing that came up later on in life when he got a job at Midway Games.
Yeah.
He called me up and he's like, "Hey, remember when we used to goof around and do that stuff?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I want to do a video game like that." And then I was like, he was like, "Will you help me create that?" And then I was like, he's like, "I can't pay you a lot, but you'll be on the cutting floor, because this has never been done where somebody who actually knows martial arts is doing a martial art game.
Yeah.
And it'll be you. It will be you." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that. What do we got to do?" He goes, "Well, first we have to pitch the idea to my company." So, we got together and did a video of us doing Chinese martial arts and, doing some choreography fight sets with it. And then we presented that to Midway, and the guy who's in charge of it right now, we presented that idea to him.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, we kind of like pitched the game to Midway, and the guy who's in charge, originally they said no. They were like, "Oh, we like your idea. We think we're gonna." And two, I can understand it because they want to make, at that time, you want to make quarters money.
Yeah.
Not just
Yeah.
a more kind of weird game kind of type of thing because nobody has ever really done it. It didn't seem like it would make money.
Of course.
So, I think that's the reason why it really went off because they just let, John and I to just collaborate with some of the other actors who were Chinese martial arts coming up with all these ideas for the game. Most of them came from that group and not like, everybody contributed later when they saw the vision. But when we were creating it, we were just doing like, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, we're going to do that,
I mean, looking back, I don't know if what does it feel like being that you were involved in what arguably was one of the most revolutionary, games to come out of all time. I mean, it really was. A lot of the stuff that it's not as if fighting games were I mean, fighting games, Street Fighter 2 was the king of fighting games, I think just around that time. But Mortal Kombat was different and it was totally unique. It was like something revolutionary in many ways, So what does it feel like having been part of that?
You know what? It follows you and it feels, I go to conventions. I get to go to like conventions in different countries. Yeah. I got to see the world because of that.
Wow.
Because people like people who were fans of Mortal Kombat are now older, and most of them have disposable income. So they're like, oh, that guy. He's like, I used to play with that guy. I'd like to meet him,
right?
Because he's part of my childhood.
Of course.
It's more. The attachment is more to memories because in those days you used to play next to your friends as opposed to playing online. You don't really know the person,
yeah.
So you developed a relationship or made new friends through Mortal Kombat. So when they see me, it reminds them of that time. So they're like, oh man, it'd be awesome to get an autograph from that guy or something like that.
Totally.
So conventions have hired me, to go out. I've been to, Punta Arenas, which is the pushing point into the Antarctic.
Wow.
For a video thing. So, when I looked across from, I walked to the edge of a pier, and when I look across, basically that's the Antarctic.
Wow.
So, and then, I've been to Norway. I've been to all these other countries just, who are fans of that game. And it does kind of remind me of the martial art world because, you're in Beijing,
yeah.
studying there. And, other people, when I go to these seminars, because that is the way I learn now, because I teach out of Chicago. So between events and teaching, I don't get a lot of time to be like, because I understand too that if I go to train in China, if I go for a week, sure, that's all right. But if I go for 3 weeks, I could probably get enough material to practice for 6 or 7 months.
Of course.
Just because I have, and not bragging, but if you've been in it a while and you keep practicing, you get a base layer.
Of course.
And two, I have that mentality where I'm always willing to learn. I will, if I see something interesting, I'll try to get out there no matter, as long as I see something interesting, I'll try to learn.
That's great. I mean, you've been in it for so long. You've been doing it for so long. You're not, a youngster anymore, and you still have the same drive and the thirst. And I think that's part of the real value of, I'm going to talk from a Chinese martial arts point of view, but I think any martial arts is that it's something that you can continuously learn and grow from forever. It's like there's always, it's not as if something, it's like watching a movie again and again. It's not. It's never like that. Even if you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's like there's so much depth to it that you just keep doing it forever. And it's good to hear that you've still got that drive and that passion.
Yeah, and again, hopefully it doesn't come off like you're helping me plug myself and who I study with teaching. So I'm making all these references. Not that I'm bigger than take more. Hopefully people take it more humbly. But when I just having the background that I had in taking a two-handed straight sword seminar from you,
Chenghui.
He was in the group. When we were taking the seminars, he looked at me and then he was like, I just got off a plane. Can I teach you and you teach my seminar? And then I looked at the crowd, and there were other, people known in the martial art community and in America taking a seminar from him. And I was like, if you don't mind, he goes, yeah, he goes, you teach it and I'll make corrections, and then that way I could just go around, correct them, and I won't get so tired from swinging around the sword.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so for the weekend, I got to, sit with him and learn from him different things, talking while helping him teach his seminar, which is, as a base, it was a big compliment.
Yeah, wow. He's also passed away in the last few years.
Yeah.
And one of his last movies that he made, there was a really great spear scene where he talks about something. And again, if you've learnt these arts with legitimate people here on a deep level, what he says is really deep. I don't know. I mean, it's a piece of the movie that I actually clipped out and I shared it many years ago on Facebook, maybe 10 years ago. And, I guess some people might appreciate it, but I think people like you and others that have trained deeply here and understand it will see the value in just those 2 lines. And I believe that those 2 lines were not written by the script writer, but were his addition. He wanted that included, and I think it's very good. So, yeah.
Yeah. Looking back at he is, a lot of people say that, and which is true, he's the modern day, what we see with two-handed sword is influenced by him.
Yes.
But he studied, under other people, other instructors. People take away, it's just for show. No, that guy, people have to kind of remember that these masters are in their 70s, 80s, and then you want to compare them. Oh, he's not good. Well, dude, you should have seen him when he was 30.
Yeah.
If he's this good now, can you imagine when he was 30 or 40 years old?
Yeah.
Because 30 or 40 years old in the old days is when you peaked out.
Yeah.
You had enough experience to take what you had and put it into your art.
Yeah, I mean, of course, he created the form which is emulated and copied so often, but he did create that for a specific purpose. But that doesn't mean that he himself wasn't skilled with a sword, and it was just for show. No, I mean, there's a lot of his background and content in there that is derived from practical usage. But of course, he created that practice with more than one goal in mind. So, yeah.
Yeah, just like we see today with Bagua, the contemporary Bagua walking is much different.
Oh, totally different.
Yeah, and I can understand it because, you got to entertain, you want to make it dramatic. Because really old style Bagua is kind of...
Well, it's not really for show. It's not like...
Right. It's kind of ugly. Not ugly in the sense of but it's not for entertaining. When you watch it and you have some idea, you're like, oh, that's really good. But if you don't have any idea and you watch it, you're like, oh, I don't understand. What's the big deal with that?
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, for me, it's always been the other way around. I'm like, no, it's good looking for people. It looks good to people who know what to look for. And the other stuff, when it's messed up, for me, people who know what to look for, it's like, no, that's ugly. But for the common person, they'd be like, wow, that's amazing. And I'm like, okay, well, we have a different perspective for sure.
Yeah. It's just like, it's just like guitar or wine tasting,
Yeah.
Cheap wine, I would be happy with cheap wine, but, a connoisseur would be happy, with a little bit more sophistication.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, I mean, your original involvement, I mean, I wanted to ask you a few more questions about Mortal Kombat, if you don't mind, but you were involved in a lot of the concept work, a lot of the content, the story, background, etc., and then you did the motion capture for quite a few of the characters. Johnny Cage, for sure, we know, because you could see your face. But did you do all the ninjas as well in the original Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, I did the Scorpion and Sub-Zero. As I said, got to add the Lin Kuei and change the way they look to make it not so mainstream.
Right.
Make it serious and have John embrace the, with the Lin Kuei, it was alchemy and kind of that type of mysterious art mixed together.
Okay.
So it was very, that's how we got to get projectiles. They're shooting fireballs, but if you see the raw footage, often you see me or the other people doing like in a kung fu movie, channeling, taking the energy from the heavens and putting it into your dantian and then turning it into ice and then shooting it out. So all of a sudden when you really see the whole posture, like you would be like, oh my God, that's so Chinese.
Okay. And you did Reptile, of course, as well, which you had to get a double flawless victory on the bridge stage and knock the guy down into the bridge instead of doing... No, you had to do a fatality, and then you'd get to fight Reptile. I remember that. So, yeah. Yeah, that was...
Yeah. It was... Yeah, and then creating all that, it wasn't just like somebody just came up with it. We were always kind of, doing crazy things to come up with ideas. So just an example of two examples of like Mortal Kombat and how we created idea. So for Scorpion, which he really didn't have a name yet, wanted to breathe fire.
Okay.
So I went through the motion of breathing fire, and then I stopped and I looked at John Tobias, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. He was like, don't be an asshole. Why don't you? Sorry, I swore.
No, that's fine on this podcast. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so I was like, I can't blow fire because my whole head will be on fire because I got a mask on. And he's like, don't be an asshole. Take that mask off and then blow fire. And then we have the guy who played Kano, Rich DeVizio, who really loves 7-Star Praying Mantis. He was like, oh, it'd be cool if it was a skeleton, because he is really afraid of skeletons. He is not afraid of, like, when he watches a scary movie, a devil or Jason or anything like that doesn't scare him. But when he watches that old Ray Harryhausen movies with the skeleton in it, he covers his eyes.
Oh, wow.
The guy was really scared. And then I was just like, oh, and his head's on fire like Ghost Rider.
Right.
So that's how, it wasn't just somebody just came up with something. We would just be bickering and arguing. And, when I created Sonya's death kiss, the kiss of death, I was like, John, we have to do the kiss of death. And then he was just like, we can't do that. There can't be any kissing in this game. And I kind of looked at him like, do you realize that we're ripping hearts off, punching people's heads off, but we can't have her kiss somebody? And he's like, no, that's sex. They'll really come down for that. And then I was like, well, let's have her kiss her hand and blow it, and it'll look like a butterfly, and it'll touch her and blow up. And John is like, we can do that. And I just laughed because I was like, she can't give somebody a kiss and they melt, but she can blow a kiss
and blow the guy up.
Blow the guy up, So you could have violence, but you can't have any intimacy.
That's crazy.
During the creation, there was a lot of moments like that where it just didn't seem like it was just went haywire.
Yeah. I remember when my local arcade got Mortal Kombat 1, because I didn't really know about this thing in the works. It wasn't like today where there's all this access to information online. And so this game came out, and I remember vividly the cabinet because you were on the side. It was Johnny Cage, but you were on the side doing a side flying sidekick kind of posture. And I remember after seeing that game in my local arcade and seeing, wow, this is something I really wanted to play. Just the joy when I'd be coming up the escalators and rounding the corner to the arcade and just seeing the side of that cabinet and basically seeing you and the joy that it used to, the memories of the joy that I used to feel back then. I still remember that today. But I wanted to ask you about Johnny Cage himself, because I was a huge Bloodsport fan, a really big Bloodsport fan. I mean, that generation, we were growing up, those were the movies of martial arts. I was into martial arts. It was, and was Johnny Cage not only the split thing, but also his outfit kind of a homage to Bloodsport?
Actually, no. A lot of people think that the company sold that idea later because just, IP.
Right.
They want to control the IP. But originally, Johnny Cage was fashioned after Iron Fist.
Oh.
Daniel Rad.
Okay.
But because it was, basically the first Mortal Kombat was filmed on John Tobias's dad's home video camera. So the production the production was not big. So John was just like, hey, he had a drawing of a guy who looked like Daniel Radden. He's like dressed like this. And I was like, dude, I don't have anything like that. And then he was just like, just biker shorts, because it is the 90s.
Yeah.
So everybody has biker shorts. So I just show up with these black biker shorts that kind of, and they're like, oh, you kind of look like Van Damme.
Yeah.
And I was like, and again, I was like, I'm a fan of Van Damme. I will spend money on Van Damme, but I don't think his martial arts are very, very good. So don't compare it to Van Damme. So not until that. So that was kind of the running joke that led into the split kick and stuff like that to make a joke of Van Damme. But originally that was not the intention.
Okay.
It was just like, though again, like I said, I'm a fan of Van Damme, but his martial arts are not very good, in my opinion. No offense to you, Van Damme, but if you want to challenge me, come to Chicago. I can help.
Yeah. I still like that movie though. I mean, even today, I'll probably watch Bloodsport at least once a year. Just any martial art movie, even the bad ones, I get hollered at when I watch bad kung fu movies. But I'll still watch them because I'll still support them. Even if I have to, even if I have to shell out $10, I will do it just to support. Oh, that's nice.
The martial art community. Because it is. I understand where it comes from, and two, we should support each other all the way around. You can't walk the walk and be like, oh no, I'm going to support this, but I can't support that. No, we have. At least in my mind, and for me, I am going to do. Not that I'm a saint or anything like that, but I'm going to try to walk the walk.
Yeah.
I'm going to consciously try to do.
Well, that's admirable. Are you still teaching where you are?
Yeah, I still teach mainly privates. A lot of my students own their own schools, so.
Oh wow.
Schools. Yeah, so they come from different styles too. I have a few from Aikido, Taekwondo, because Taekwondo guys seem to want to learn all the weapons because they don't really have weapons.
Oh, that's
in their,
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is for their business, so they need to have that to stay ahead of their competitor, things like that. But I still love to teach because when you teach more, for me when I teach privately, it's more. We can stylize it.
Well, individualize it maybe, yeah?
Yeah, because, even for the jiu-jitsu guys that I teach, it's not because I'm not like trying to teach them jiu-jitsu. I'm like, oh, in Tai Chi Shingi Bagua, we have this, which is kind of similar. And two, later on, if you're not doing it in the ring and you want to make that transition into combat, because I do, do think that just your education combat wise, I could tell a quick story about that in a second, if you don't mind. Combat wise, you need to have not just Chinese martial arts just doesn't have a striking. It has all of it has striking, kicking, grappling, joint lock, and
it's mixed.
And ground. Yeah, everything is mixed.
Yeah.
So there is no really such thing as mixed martial arts because traditional martial arts are already mixed.
Yeah.
So I try to not teach them what they know, but give them a view of, because I have the body connection. I'm like, oh, this is available to you. This is available to you in actual combat. During the early days of MMA, when I was, I'm a fan of, and I was watching it, I watched the Gracie guys, destroy everybody. And so, when I went in after watching one of those to Guo Jinhua, and I was like, man, I'm gonna try this on him. Because this worked, and I seen this work. So we talked to Master Gomi and another guy. We were like, oh yeah, we watched this Ultimate Fighting. He's like, Ultimate Fighting? It sounds cool. And then he was just like, and the jiu-jitsu guy won, and Master Go taught for a couple of years of special forces in Japan. They hired him out. The Chinese government hired him out to teach there. He speaks Japanese, but anyway, he is just like. Jiu-jitsu won? He's like, you mean the guy had won with jiu-jitsu, but he did other things. And I'm like, no, he does jiu-jitsu. And he's like, show me. And so when he said show me, I was like, ooh, I'm gonna catch him off guard. So I shot in to grab his leg as soon as he said show me, because he was standing upright. Yeah. But he grabbed the base of my jaw and the back of my neck. I tried to catch him off guard. And he just grabbed me, and I just let go of him because he was like twisting. And then the guy next to me started laughing. He goes, "No, Master Go, you're not allowed to kill him." And I was just like, "Whoa!" And it really made me. I was like, "Wait a minute." He was totally off guard, and I shot in to grab his legs. I thought I would at least take him to the ground. Yeah, so I shot in, and he grabbed my jaw in the back of my neck and started like twisting. Not, he could have like broke my neck. But I thought because he was completely standing upright and kind of flat-footed that I would catch him. Yeah. But he was like, "Why do they call this ultimate martial arts?" And the guy was like, "No, they do it for money. They win money." And he was like, "Oh, money, that's really good." He goes, "But you Americans are weird. Why would you call this ultimate martial arts if you can't kill the guy?" So after that, I was just really, because at that point I was doing Sanda and I was doing traditional martial arts, but I was really not really looking at it for the extreme combat application.
Yeah.
And so I started asking him about that, and I was just like, he's like, "Well, in Chinese martial arts, we really don't have, we do, our guard position is really kind of lower. We really don't extend the arm," because he's like, "Extend your arm." I extend my arm. He tapped me on the inside of the elbow, and I was just like, "Zow." And I was like, and he's like, "That was like 1% power. Imagine if I gave you 30% power." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you would have broken my elbow, without doing a joint lock."
Right.
And he was like, and then he was like this, and he really started explaining like, the application of Chinese martial arts, how it really can transition into the ring, because it is really about warfare. And then we got into the whole philosophy of he's like, Chinese martial arts is about me taking shit, or taking your shit, or you not wanting me to take your shit. And I was kind of looked at him, and it's like, because in China, it's easier to me to ride into town and kill everybody and just take what I want, because then, 2, I don't want you in the afterlife to come back and look for me and have the whole karma thing, because we're Buddhist and Taoist and believe in that stuff. So, if I kill you, and now I'm 50 and you come back and you're 25 and you jump out with a sword and I'm not expecting it, you kill me. So it's better off just to kill you and take your stuff than do that. But 2, I don't want you to take my stuff. So I hire other martial artists to protect the village.
Yeah.
And then I was just, whoa, it's a different aspect. And then I was like, whoa, so there is a warrior clan. He goes, it's China. So imagine this. You're 3 years old and your family loves you, but they can't feed you. So they sell you to a warlord who you would think would beat you up, but no, they're really cunning. He's like, you're crying, and they're like, go to hit this tree. And so you're lightly tapping the tree for a couple days, and he's just making you do that. And he's like, hey, if you go hit this tree a little harder, that bowl of rice I give you, I'll give you 2 bowls of rice. What? And so you hit the tree harder, and then you're hitting it for a while, and then to tell you, hey, you're doing really good. He goes, if you hit the tree even harder and use these bunch of techniques that I'm going to show you, I will give you a piece of tofu with the rice. And so all of a sudden, he's like, all of a sudden you get these people. He goes, everybody thinks that we're smart about the martial arts. He goes, so all of a sudden I have this guy hitting this tree, going to become my human weapon for a piece of steak.
Yeah.
And so so looking at that, he's like, not that it always went like that, but that's how it begins. You got poverty, and you can have a group of people being fed, and you're now their father, because you're providing them with food and clothes, nice clothes and things like that, and they're basically hardening their bodies to get ready to do the bodyguard work or the anti-body work like you want. So it is really different.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people also don't realize that the societal structure in China was quite different to what you're used to. Like, villages had to basically protect themselves, and one group going in and raiding and pillaging was very common, even more so in the north, but generally everywhere. So, you had to have people that knew how to do at least something to defend villages and keep things going. And that's where sometimes you would be employed in that sense. It actually was profitable to be a martial arts teacher in a village, and it became something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Too. A lot of people think that there's a misconception about the farmer learning to fight. No, the farmer learned only a little fighting, so that way he can keep somebody busy until the headmaster dispatched whoever he had to dispatch and come over and dispatch whoever you were kind of putting a hold on. Him and his group would just be, supported by farmers who knew the basic. Just so, you get 10 farmers poking something at you, to keep you in one place until, the guy who really knew his stuff would come over and,
Well, that's where also the differing emperors started to have taxation, because what they did was they would say, you don't have to worry about protecting your village because I will train up soldiers who will be doing this exact work. So they don't have to farm and you don't have to fight so much. In fact, there's a thought that the character in Chinese Jing, which looks like a tic-tac-toe kind of drawing, right? If you count the squares, you get 9, really. Jing looks like that, the character Jing. And it would be basically, if farmers would cultivate 8 plots of land, the 9th would be given to the government. So whatever's cultivated on that 9th piece would be given to the government, really, as a contribution to maintain the soldiers. So the soldiers don't have to farm. All they have to do is be busy with preparation and guarding. So it's a very interesting, but it's a long history and it's more complicated than that. But there's just one aspect to it. But yeah.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. It's always more complicated, but people can get an idea, and hopefully listening to this, get out there and explore. Get out there and be humble. We in my lineage, I'm happy to say that we have one person, Sun Lu Tang, who did that. He was a master of Xingyi, and he went out and learned Bagua, and he went out and learned Tai Chi. He was humble enough to do that. Even though he did it later on in his life, and as I was told that he was a little hellion when he was younger. He liked to fight, but later on, he really wanted to embrace the Chinese martial art and keep his journey going.
I went to the town that he learned Tai Chi at. Well, where the style of Tai Chi that he learned the originated from in China, actually. It was quite interesting. They were filming a documentary there, and they asked me to be in it. That was I think 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So yeah, it was interesting to go to that town, that village. But yeah, they've got a bust of Sun Lutang there as well.
You are so lucky. That's so awesome. Man, that is really cool.
Well, look, if China opens up, hopefully soon, and you are coming back around this way, we'll definitely get together. And it's not a very far a train ride from Beijing to go there. You just got to go down to Handan, and then from Handan, it's not so far. So yeah, definitely we can go down there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, look, we're going on to 1 hour and 40 minutes. I don't want to take up your whole morning. It's been awesome talking to you. We can do this again in the future. It was great to finally talk to you as somebody that I looked up to. One last question before we finish. Scorpion or Sub-Zero?
Sub-Zero.
Okay.
Only because... Two, it's more, even though Sub-Zero is the second one, we only started with Scorpion, and Scorpion was supposed to be the Lin Kuei.
Okay.
But, because of storyline and because it became, started becoming popular and we had to, build out the story more. Because, again, it was just simple. We never thought it would be this big. Originally, it was supposed to be 200 arcade cabinets. And that's why I am on the side of the game, because John was like, man, I want to thank you for really creating this with me. He goes, so I'm going to scrap the artwork that is supposed to be on the side of the game and put you on the side of the game.
Oh, that's awesome.
As a tribute to, as a tribute to our friendship and to what you did. And I was like, wow, thank you. So he told me that the night before, literally 12 hours before I was in the studio trying to shoot pictures of the flying, well, no, it's the flying, originally it was the Flying 7 or Flying, what is it?
What?
Chi? Qifan. You know that in Chinese martial arts, and especially in the northern, you have that flying seven where you're striking, your legs are up so you don't get chopped with a sword or a staff in the legs, and you're throwing a punch or poking out with a sword. I wish my Chinese was better.
You mean Tishi, knee lifting?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but in the air. So originally it was supposed to be that, but we were just kind of looking at it, and it was too long. So eventually it turned into flying sidekick.
I see.
But I thought, my instructor called it the flying seven because it looks like the number 7 flying.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So originally I was so into the Chinese martial arts, still am, but I wanted that to be on the side of the game.
Yeah.
So, but because it was so long, we were like, oh, we can't do that. We have to do a flying sidekick. Okay. Well, so that, again, so Sub-Zero is more of the Chinese side of that mythology. So that's why I prefer Sub-Zero.
Okay. Well, actually, I wanted to ask you as well your opinion on the latest movie.
I think the actors, did pretty good. I think that it was rushed. I think they could have, something more. During an interview, a guy did an interesting thing that I was getting an interview by, a guy from Arizona. He turned the sound off, some of the fighting. So there was no sound, so I could just watch the action. And that was just like, oh my God, they rushed it.
Oh,
You could really see that it wasn't, that they didn't take the time to really let the guys view what they were doing.
Okay.
Because without the sound effects, I was like, oh, that's a miss, that's a miss, that's a miss.
Oh wow.
He's so far away from.
Okay, you're gonna make me rewatch it now. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna rewatch it and turn the sound off just to spot this.
Yeah, especially during the training scene when the main hero, I forget his name, is fighting with Kung Lao.
Okay.
Kung Lao the Thunderer, which we took out of Chinese mythology. So everybody. So everybody, if you're into Chinese martial arts and you really now look back at Mortal Kombat, you will see how much influence it had on the game.
Yeah.
Being that far back.
Yeah. Well, awesome. It's been great talking to you. It's been great hearing these stories. It's really brought me back to some really good memories. I'm glad that we finally got in contact with each other. Is there any way that you want the public, if they're looking to be in contact, or if you have any presence anywhere, like Instagram or whatever that you want to make public, you could just send it to me. I'll put it in the show notes. But if there's anything else you wanna add, that you wanna say here regarding contact, or anything that you're doing that's upcoming, go ahead.
Okay, thank you a lot, and hopefully we get to hang out together.
I'm looking forward to it. It's been great talking to you.
Okay, get over here.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. We'll talk soon.
Have a good night.
You too. Thank you. Goodbye.